Our next session is virtual performance. So this is what the recording process is going to look like for sending something to your students. Before they can send anything to you, you have to send something to them that's going to lead them and guide them through the process. So hardware, you're going to need two devices. You're going to need a device with a camera, and you're going to need a device to edit videos. For you, that could actually be the same thing. If you have a laptop with a webcam on it, then that can cover both of those potentially. It might be easier for you to do a recording on a phone or a tablet, that's fine. But you'll need a device that can do both of those things. You're also going to need a portable hard drive. And this is one of the few like actual real expenses to this project for you. It's usually, I found them for about 50 bucks online. You can find them on Amazon. Most of them are going to work for a PC or a Mac, but you've got to pick which one. You've got to format it to which one, so you can't swap it back and forth between the two. Um, with the 3 virtual choir projects that I did, it took up 500 gigabytes of space, which is quite a bit if you're considering a computer. And that's why you can't just save these files to your computer. You want to save them on an external drive. Even if you could eke out 500 gigs of space on your computer, that's going to really affect your computer's performance. It's going to be better to have this on an external drive. A terabyte should be plenty. And then when you save those videos, dedicate a specific location. Don't move them around, because once you get them in a specific spot, your programs that edit them are going to look in that specific spot. You're going to need 3 types of programs. You're going to need a recording program, you're going to need an audio editing program, and you're going to need a video editing program. I did all of this on my Mac that I got from the district. And I used QuickTime to record. QuickTime is super simple and super easy to do video recording and screencasting recording. Logic Pro and Final Cut Pro are both professional level programs that edit audio and video. If you have used Apple products before, Logic Pro is kind of like the professional version of GarageBand, and Final Cut Pro is kind of like the professional version of iMovie. They're great programs. They're kind of expensive, but right now the programs are on a free 90-day trial. So if that's still continuing on in the fall, which I imagine it will be, then when you start on these projects, then you can use the 90-day free trial and try them out. And then if you really like them, then you can look into what it would take to purchase them later on the line. But I used the free 90-day trials for both of those, and I was very, very happy with the results. If your computer has any kind of webcam on it or any, something like that, it's going to have its own recording app. If you don't like that app or you can't find it, you can download some. I know some people that use Screencastify, which is a free download, and they really like it because it can do regular webcam recording, it can do screen recording, it can alternate between the two. Even Google Meet, which is really a video conferencing app, will still let you have a meet with just yourself and record your screen and record your video facing you as well. If you don't do Logic Pro and Final Cut Pro, other options, Pro Tools is a great software by Avid Software, the same people that make Sibelius. GarageBand, which is on any Apple device, that's going to be a really good audio editing option. Audacity is free, works on PC or Mac, and it's a great program. I've used it a lot. My students use it a lot. It's really good. Video, if you want another professional level thing, Adobe Premiere would be a good option, but that, like Final Cut Pro, is expensive. On Apple, you can use iMovie. On PCs, you can use Windows Movie Maker. I know some people that have used Filmora, which is a free download as well, and they had some good results for that. The thing to just keep in mind is that free programs are usually free for a reason, and they're less robust than the full versions of these programs. So keep that in mind. The biggest thing for virtual ensembles, the biggest hiccup for free versions is going to be in your video editing software. because free video editing software will usually not do the number of splits that you need it to do. A lot of the free versions of video editors will only do a 4-way split or maybe a 6-way split. You're probably going to want bigger splits than that. For your students, they're going to need 2 devices. They're going to need a device that supports headphones that allows them to see and hear the prompt video. And they're going to need a device with a camera that can record their performance. And these actually have to be 2 different devices because they have to use them at the same time. It can be any combination of phone, tablet, computer. You can use 2 phones, you can use a phone and a computer. It doesn't matter as long as one has a camera and one supports headphones. It is possible to do it with a single device, but only in certain circumstances and only with certain devices. So with my students, I just tell them you need 2 devices. Okay, so this stage of the process is going to involve a little bit of recording, a little bit of audio editing, and a little bit of video editing. This is sort of like the pre-project, and you're going to create something to send to your students. First things first, you're going to create instructions for recording. I think that the instructions work really well as a video instead of just written instructions for a couple of reasons. One is it takes them by the hand and walks them through the process. But the other is that it allows you to create sync points. Now, if you think you've ever seen a TV show or a movie being recorded, they have the slate board at the beginning of it, and they're like, and action, and they clap it together. Well, what's happening there is they're creating a sync point. They're creating a visual and audio thing where they can line up the video and the audio afterwards. You can create the same thing with your instructions. So what I did is I created a PowerPoint, and then I used QuickTime to do a screen capture and record myself speaking over the PowerPoint. I just advanced the PowerPoint while I spoke about it. And then at the end of that, I created a point where I had my students clap in time and created a sync point for that. I'm going to just go ahead and show you the YouTube video of this. It walks them through this whole process of what to do with each of these things. And then periodically throughout there, I'll stop and say, okay, go get this ready, go get this ready, pause the video while you get this ready. Then when it comes time for all of their preparation work, and I have them check things like sound levels and light levels and do a test recording and all of that, then I have them create a sync point. Listen. And I have a metronome clicking, clap, and then I want them to clap. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now listen. Now I have them listen and then clap because in the final recording that they're going to send to me, I'm only going to get what they're doing. I'm not going to get my click points that they're listening to. And so by creating that little, thing where they respond, where they're clapping, then I get their claps. And that way I know, okay, that's where I need to sync up the video because I can hear their claps. And if everyone's clap is at the same point in time, then I can line up everyone's claps. And now all my videos are lined up in time, in sync. Just as an FYI, when I did the screen capture of myself speaking over it for QuickTime, I don't know about the others, I had to mute the computer speakers for it to work, but then it worked just fine. Once I created that instruction video, I set that aside and I created a second video with me conducting. And I was conducting over the song. And the links that I gave you in the PowerPoint that link to the instruction video also have the conducting video as part of that. And I conducted along with the song and did all the cues and all the expression as if I was in front of them. And then I just added those 2 videos together and I exported it as a video project. Most performers will have a pretty hard time if you just give them like a metronome or something. So even professionals. So the conducting video is pretty important. If you don't want, if your song is easy enough to do without a conducting video and you just want to do an accompaniment video, you can. Or if you want to just do a conducting video, maybe that would work. I actually think it's better to have the conducting and the accompaniment at the same time. So once I made my conducting video, I sent that to my accompanist and I had them record their part just like they were a student. They walked through all the instructions, they did the little claps to sync the video in time, and then they played the accompaniment while watching me conduct. So it was already in sync with everything that we were doing. Then I just added that accompaniment track to my instructions and exported it as a new video. If you already have an existing accompaniment track, you can use that. Or if you want to create your track digitally, you can use that. In the songs that are really metronomic, really straightforward, same tempo the whole time, that would be very straightforward to do. If you create your accompaniment first or you use your accompaniment from an existing source, you're just going to flip that process. Instead of conducting and then recording the accompaniment, you'll record the accompaniment and then conduct to, the pre-existing recording, just like we would conduct to the radio sometimes. I know, I've seen you. You do it. In that case, now you have instructions, conducting, and accompaniment all in the same video. And you're just going to export that. That becomes the prompt for your students. And that should be a pretty straightforward thing for them to follow. Now, if I were only working with my advanced students, that would be plenty. But if I'm working with some beginning students and they would kind of struggle even just for that much of it, then you can take this optional step. And for one of the 3 virtual ensembles I did this optional step, and I think it was really helpful. Instead of taking that prompt and sending it to all of your students right away, I just sent it to my section leaders and my top musicians, and I had them record their part first. So they listened to the accompaniment, they watched me conduct, they recorded their audio, and they sent me the video. That video is a video I'm going to use for the virtual choir just a little bit down the road. But for right now, I extracted the audio of that video and I added it to my prompt video, just like I did with my accompaniment. And so now they have instructions, me conducting, the piano playing the accompaniment, and a really experienced singer singing their part all in one. And it became an incredibly easy thing for even my most basic, inexperienced students to follow, because they're listening to their section leader who they would listen to in a rehearsal setting. It really mimics a lot of what they're going to hear in a live rehearsal setting. And that helped with a lot of the post-production issues. I didn't have to do nearly as much editing because it was such a strong example to follow. I said before that a lot of people do different approaches to virtual ensembles. One of the reasons that Eric Whitaker can get hundreds and thousands of people into the same thing is that that's what he does in his virtual ensembles. He gives people all of these different steps that really help them be accurate. So now that you have your demo recording, I had one for each part. So sopranos had one, altos had one, etc. And then I sent that out to all of my students at large. I sent them a YouTube link that had all of those instructions, and they just played the YouTube video while they recorded to it. When your students record, and all of this is in the instructions video, and the PowerPoint here has a link to the instructions video right there. There's also a link at the very end of the handout. When they record, there's a couple of big things that they need to do. They need to use landscape orientation, and preferably a standard landscape format, not like a square, 1-to-1 aspect ratio format. They use a landscape orientation. It's really going to help out later on. I'll point out when that happens. If they don't, it's not a deal breaker. It just means you get to do a little bit more individual editing. Be aware of light levels and noise levels. There's some students that they were singing really well, but because it was so noisy where they were, I couldn't use a lot of their audio. I could still use their video, but I couldn't use a lot of their audio because of background noise. Noise reduction software can help. We'll talk about that later, but it's not going to be as good as starting with a really good volume level. Keep the camera close, centered on your face. It should be the you show. And then of course, there's lots of other instructions. Just make sure that they follow them really carefully. If you feel like your students might need a test run, then maybe for one of the submissions they send for just a grade, you can have them send a video instead of just an audio. I used Google Drive and Google Classroom for the different projects that I did. Google Classroom is great. Like I said before, you can put everything all in one place. You can have your prompt, your instructions, your feedback, all in one place. You create it as an assignment that tracks who's done it, who hasn't. If for whatever reason you can't or don't want to use Google Classroom, you can use a Google form, and you can enable Google Forms to let students upload a file. And then that you can use the form, the spreadsheet that the form creates automatically for you, to see who's turned it in, to get the files. It's a really handy way of doing that. You could just have a shared Google Drive folder, but then you run into things about people accidentally deleting someone's, and then you don't have a good way of tracking it. So you might have to coordinate that with a spreadsheet or something like that. The summary is, first you create your instructions video. Like I said, I used a PowerPoint that then I spoke over the PowerPoint, and that turned into a video. Set that aside, and then you create a conducting video where you're either mentally imagining the music or you're actually listening to the accompaniment and you're conducting to it. Then you create an accompaniment track and add that to your video, or you use an existing one and add that to your video. So now your video has instructions, conducting, and accompaniment. Like I said, optionally, you can add in a single part to that to serve as like a demo recording. I think that's really helpful for new students, but if you're working with only your advanced students, they may not need that. At that point, you're gonna send that combined video to your students, and then they're going to submit it to a cloud space like Google Classroom. You're gonna collect and organize those. That's all of the prompts. That's all of the work that happens before you actually start editing the final project.